Welcome to the Hornets Hivecast, the official podcast of your Charlotte Hornets. Here's your host, Sam Farber.
Welcome to another edition of the Hornets Hivecast, your Hornets podcast with all the notes, quotes, and daily buzz around your favorite NBA team. I'm Sam Farber, and it is a pleasure and a privilege to have you with us once again as we work our way through the 2020-2021 Hornets roster, giving you our in-depth analysis on each and every player. And today, we take a look at Brad Wanamaker. Came to the team a little bit later in the season, the one trade product that was brought in mid-season coming over from the Golden State Warriors, and he certainly had some significant games with Charlotte. So we're going to talk about his performance this past season, take a glimpse into his future in the NBA overall. Helping me out is Sam Purley, coordinator of digital media content for the Charlotte Hornets, for another Two Sams edition of the HHC. And Sam, I think the top line thing is for Brad, he was that one addition, and he did end up having an impact. He was brought over to the team pretty quickly after the wrist injury to LaMelo Ball. I think he was seen as kind of, a stopgap, as someone who could fill that role, had certainly some NBA time, and I think he did a pretty good job there. I mean, obviously, as the injury started to mount, things went awry for the Hornets, but I think you can certainly say Brad Wanamaker had a positive impact in his time on the floor for the Hornets.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't, on the national NBA landscape, wasn't exactly the most splashy or headline-grabbing trade acquisition, but really nice veteran piece they added in midseason in Brad Wanamaker. And you spoke about, at the time, I think it was to kind of make up for LaMelo, who I believe had just broken his wrist maybe a week earlier. And then after they acquired Brad, about a week later, Malik went down, Gordon Hayward went down. I think Devontae Graham was dealing with some injuries here and there. So the role that Brad, I think they initially thought he was going to have, really expanded a little bit starting at the month of April. And I thought he was great. 7 points per game, 43% shooting, was around 90% from the line, 3.5 assists, 22 games off the bench. Very consistent, just a really good, rock-solid veteran presence for this team. It wasn't really working out with him in Golden State, but had obviously familiarity with Terry, familiarity with Gordon, who did not really play too much with, but I thought it was a great addition. He's had kind of a unique background, too, kind of coming up through the ranks overseas before coming back to the NBA. So older guy, I thought it was a great addition for the Hornets, and they really didn't give up anything for him. I think it was a future pick that's unlikely to convey to Golden State. So I think Mitch did a good job with the one deal they did make this season in the middle of the year.
Yeah, and I think the Warriors gave back a similarly protected pick. So if you're giving away that pick, you're pretty excited because it basically means the Hornets will be a division champ and likely a top 2 or 3 seed in the NBA playoffs if in 2025 they have to give away that second round pick to Golden State. But in terms of best moments from this past season for Brad Wanamaker, the game that stands out to me is the win at Milwaukee. And I think most people remember that game, if they remember it at all, as the one where the Bucks benched their entire starting 5. Everyone who played in an all-star game any time in their career did not play that game for Milwaukee. Hornets were banged up, obviously had just lost Gordon Hayward, had lost LaMelo Ball. Injuries were just piling up, and maybe Milwaukee thought they could, sneak one by without playing any starters, or maybe they just had their own injury issues and just wanted to protect their players. But whatever the reason, Charlotte was given an opportunity, and Brad Wanamaker was able to take it. And it was not so much his scoring. He only had 6 points in that game, but he came very close to his career high for assists, had 7 assists in that one. And he has been, I would say, a little bit more of a slasher scorer type of relief guard than a big-time assist player. But that was a day where the Hornets really needed someone to run the show, and he was able to do it. 22 minutes on the floor in a relief role. He was really able to run the show for the Hornets and help guide them to a win.
Bucks on the run out, trailing by 2. Merrill into the lane, goes up, and has it swatted away. Cody Zeller, the rejection. Brad Wanamaker in transition. He goes into the lane, up with the left-hand lay-in. Yes, sir! Brad Wanamaker, tough finish in traffic. He succeeds where Merrill fails, and the Hornets now leading by 4.
Yeah, and I think that was on the trip or that road stretch where they lost Malik in Brooklyn and then lost Gordon in Indiana in back-to-back games. And, yeah, you make a good point. He kind of piles up the assists, but it's nothing that's super flashy, super showy. He doesn't have sort of those LaMelo behind-the-back, full-court underhand passes, which not a lot of guys do, granted. But I think another thing that really impressed me about Brad this year, and granted, I've not watched a whole lot of him prior to his time in Charlotte, was he's a great finisher at the rim. I mean, he can really kind of get downhill. He's got really kind of sturdy frame, just a really solid, rock-hard kind of physique that kind of allows him to play downhill a little bit. He can get to the rim. He can draw contact. He's a great free throw shooter. I think he led the league in percentage last year. You know, he kind of helped in a lot of different areas. Defensively, he was really good. He did a little bit more than I think the Hornets were necessarily expecting when they traded for him, just because with the injuries, like you said, started to kind of pile up. But I think Brad rose to the occasion. I think another big game that he had was the win in Detroit in early May. I think he had 15 points, something like that, and kind of a lot of big baskets down the stretch to kind of pull away from a Pistons team in a win that at the time the Hornets really needed to have.
Couple of games that certainly stand out, and the Hornets ended up needing not everyone, but almost everyone to make the play-in. Brad Wanamaker had an impact helping the Hornets end that postseason drought that now is over after 5 years. Obviously, bigger goals lie ahead for Charlotte, but Brad Wanamaker at least was able to get the years since Hornets have been to postseason calendar has been reset in the offices, and Brad was able to help in that regard. Well, coming up next, we're going to hear from the man himself. Brad Wanamaker sits down with us next here on the Hornets Hivecast.
Hornets fans, the buzz is building. For season ticket packages for the 2021-2022 season, call 704-HORNETS or visit Hornets.com to chat live with a season ticket representative. Lock in your price today.
Sam Farber here with you on the Hornets Hivecast, and now let's welcome in Brad Wanamaker. Brad, thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate you having me.
When you were traded to the Hornets March 25th, what did you heard? What do you recall thinking about that next journey in your professional basketball career?
Excitement. I talked to Gordon Hayward, T-Roll, before I came here. Obviously I was a fan from a distance, seeing what they was doing. But for me, it was a fresh start. Obviously, I had some ups and downs in Golden State, and I just was looking for a fresh start, and the Hornets gave me that.
There's a lot to pick from what's been a very exciting season. What's that one signature moment that you'll take away from your time here in this 2020-2021 season?
I think of Miles Bridges' dunk against the Hawks. Just seeing it in person. Like, you see it all the time on TV, but he took off. I think he went from the right wing down the middle, and he had a crazy dunk, and I was just like, wow. So that was a pretty cool moment for me.
And then how about for you individually as well?
Just being out there, helping the team get a few wins when I had my opportunity. That was big for me. Just, obviously I struggled a little bit in Golden State, and for me to come here and help the team get a few wins when I had the opportunity was great for me individually and for my confidence.
You did have some good moments at Golden State, and we joked a little bit during the season that I was glad you finally established a new season high because I could get that off my boards. But you were also there for one of the signature moments of the season in a Warriors uniform when Terry Rozier hit that fadeaway at the buzzer. We've talked about it since then, but when you see plays like that and the one you described with Miles Bridges, what does it say about the potential for a young team that certainly had its frustrations coming down the stretch with 6 straight losses, but certainly has its potential with those moments?
The future is bright. Obviously you got a good core of young guys. I'm sure in the offseason the Hornets will add a few pieces, but, the future is bright. Just to see what they did over the last couple of years and things that went well this year. Obviously a few injuries and the safety and health protocols, kind of took a toll at the wrong time in the year and kind of dropped down the team a little bit, missing some key pieces. But, where the things are going well and everybody's healthy, I think the future is really bright.
Looking at those health and safety protocols, what was it like being traded amidst that? Because you played internationally, you certainly traveled a lot in your professional career. What was it like having to adhere to health and safety protocols while going from one team to another?
It was pretty easy for me because I had the vaccine. So the NBA made pretty lenient with guys who was vaccinated. But, it still was a scary moment because most people that's vaccinated still get COVID, So I was just really cautious, in that travel and just trying to keep my distance from everyone.
In terms of how this season went with all the health and safety protocols, we hope it's not like this, ever again. But is there any part of the health and safety protocols or the day-to-day routine that you established during COVID-19 that maybe you'll incorporate into what you do in the future or wouldn't mind keeping around?
Just keeping your distance from some people. Obviously, I'm big on hygiene, so that wasn't a thing that, shocked me when they told you to do certain things. But, just understanding, how germs spread, how you could get affected, and just keeping that personal space between other people, and just, watching, how you move or things you touch, certain things like that you really don't pay a mind to until this COVID pandemic.
Something we can all keep in mind. How about one thing that you are not going to be sad to see gone at the end of this season in terms of the protocols and the day-to-day that you'd be happy to say good riddance to?
Hopefully no more masks. That would probably be number one. And the late-night testing. Sometimes we had to test 11 o'clock at night, and most times you're winding down, getting ready for bed. So them are the top two things on my list.
Last one for you personally, looking towards your future. What's your next step in terms of what you most want to work on so that when you come back into the NBA next season, that you're that much more prepared for what's ahead?
Just knocking down shots. I didn't do it this year at a rate that I usually do it. And, it's part of the game, though. You have your ups and downs. And I'm aware of that. But, just being more of a consistent shooter.
Brad, it's been great getting to know you over the course of this season. Thanks for all your hard work and all your time here with us on the radio side. And we look forward to watching you again next season.
All right, man. Appreciate you.
We'll be back with more in just a moment here on the Hornets Hivecast.
Be sure to check out the Hornets Fan Shop at Spectrum Center, now open Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Check out all the newest Hornets gear or grab a new pair of J's. It's an easy trip on the light rail, or you can shop from the comfort of your own home 24/7 at HornetsFanShop.com.
Sam Farber and Sam Purley back here again on the HHC. And Sam, we just heard from Brad Wanamaker and some interesting takes on the season. I think he was honest about where he needs to work on his individual game. The shooting percentages were down for him on his previous NBA numbers. He spent a lot of time overseas, and just the limited amount I've watched the game overseas, you see a lot more of the highlights being finishes at the rim, a lot more downhill drives, which is something he really excels at. The NBA game today, at least for guards, a lot of it revolves around three-point shooting, and that was something he struggled with, so something he says he'll work on in the offseason. What were your takeaways?
Yeah, it's make a good point about sort of the parallels between how he plays now and sort of the European style. I mean, like kind of mentioned previously, he had a very kind of unconventional path. Usually guys that go undrafted, he was undrafted in 2011. Usually if you go overseas for 9 years, which he did, you don't ever really come over to the NBA. It just doesn't happen at, 28, 29 years old. But he found a way to do it, played 2 years with the Celtics, was on some big teams. And like you said, that's not a huge part of the game over there in Europe. You don't see these guys making 200 threes a season and shooting 45, upwards close to 50% from three. So you can kind of tell that his play style and his body and the way he kind of plays the game is sort of how he picked up playing over in Italy and France and Turkey and places like this. But yeah, I think the three-point shooting is a big thing for him. It wasn't ever really his shot. I'm looking right here, 3 of 24 with the Hornets. So it wasn't really part of his game. The Hornets didn't necessarily ask him to do that a whole lot. It was more of driving into the paint, getting to the rim, generating free throws, facilitating, not turning the ball over, kind of just simple stuff. And I think Brad kind of understands his role right now in the league. Kind of a guy that's going to fill in the gaps a little bit. But yeah, if he could get a three-point shot, I mean, that would really kind of extend his usability in this league for sure. I mean, really, if he could get up to, I don't know, say 35% or so, I think that would really, really help him. Again, overall, I think it was a really nice addition to the Hornets this year, and I think he fit in really well during the 6 or 7 weeks he was with the franchise.
And to be fair on the three-point shooting, it's not as if he hasn't been at that mark before. The previous season in Boston, he shot 36% from three. The year before that, in kind of very sparing minutes, he shot about 40% from beyond the arc. So it's not as if he hasn't done it for a season previously. And we also don't know what the impact of a COVID protocol all season really ended up having on him. The minutes per game were relatively similar this most recent season compared to the last one he had in Boston. But, how much time he was able to really get in gyms, how much time he was able to have games in the offseason or just continuing his practice routine, everything was impacted by COVID-19. So not to say that that's an excuse that he is using or that we're providing, but it's a reality that this was an odd season. And I think there's also, I'm a big believer in it's good to have guys who zig when everyone else is zagging. There's a lot of players who are trying to be Steph Curry's, Damian Lillard's. It's okay if your strong suit is that ability to get downhill to the hoop and put players in a difficult position. If you are getting up close with Brad Wanamaker, he is almost automatic from the free throw line. And if you give him some space, we've seen that he'll finish at the 10. So a player that I think certainly has a role to play moving forward in the NBA, and hopefully that benefit of a more normal offseason will push those three-point shooting numbers right back to where they were.
Yeah, and real quick, that's a good point you make about the three-point, because I'm looking at it now, 41% his first year, 36% his second year. A lot of that has to do with personnel and what role you take on. And I think Boston, he was probably a little bit less of a on-ball main ball handler. Maybe he's playing off the ball a little bit more of catch-and-shoot situations with Kyrie Irving, Marcus Smart, the guys that were there. In this area, he was entirely on ball, and one of the things that just isn't a super big strength was just creating three-point shots off the dribble. Just wasn't asked to do that in kind of the role that he was. He was a lead ball handler, backup point guard, kind of facilitating, running the offense, floor general. So I think that's not a huge knock on him. And some of that's personnel, and like you said, the crazy year. I think you got to kind of chalk up a lot of stuff this year to just weird circumstances and different roles and absences and things like that. So, yeah, I think Brad, he understands. He's grinded a long time to get into the NBA, and I've no doubt that he could kind of figure this out and kind of extend that career even longer if he becomes a better shooter from behind the arc.
We will continue our series of podcasts looking at players from this most recent season for the Hornets, given you our perspective on the year that was and glimpsing into the future as we continue on here on the Hornets Hivecast. But for now, thanks to Sam Perley for joining us today, and thanks to Brad Wanamaker for a great season in the Queen City. And most of all, thanks to all of you for tuning in. We will have our next podcast in the next couple of days. For now, for everyone here, I'm Sam Farber saying it's been a pleasure and a privilege, and thanks for tuning in to the Hornets Hivecast.
Thanks for listening to the Hornets Hivecast. For more coverage, visit Hornets.com.